Well, good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us My name is Wakia Duncan, and I am a proud member of the epic Epsilon Pi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Today, April 9th, is our Global Impact Day, and we are having this program with a focus on Haiti. I'd first like to thank our president, Stephanie Cooper Smiley, in her absence, and our wonderful vice president, Kim Adams, who is here, and definitely our tech guru, Ms. Jeanette Taylor. Thank you so much. So we'll have Kim.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you so much to our wonderful presenter, and as well as the chairperson for Global Impact, as she introduced herself, Wakia Duncan. Thank you also. I reiterate exactly what she just said. Thank you for being here. And as we celebrate, this is AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha's Global Impact Day internationally, which means all chapters around the world are celebrating Global Impact Day in some way. And we know an impact means that you are having a strong effect on someone or something. And so tonight, we're hoping that we're going to have a strong effect on all of you, on your knowledge about Haiti, bring you into the experience, and just have a wonderful time. So I'm going to turn this right back to our chairperson, the lovely Wakia Duncan. And I see Madam President,
Yes.
Stephanie Cooper Smiley has joined us. So we wave hello to you tonight as well.
Would you like to give some greetings?
Okay.
No, because I want to eat. I'm waiting.
Okay.
So we are ready. Thank you.
And thank you again, Janine, for all of this amazing tech work that you're doing. So I am going to start with sharing my screen with you, and we are going to do a quick presentation. And just to let you know, yes, I did cheat. And I already started the meal because I have 4 children who would probably hurt me if I started cooking later than 7. So that's just to let you know. Okay, so I want to start with a couple of questions, and just feel free to unmute yourself. And after we answer some of these questions, the captivating Cristela Leandre is going to speak to us just a little bit about her own experience as a daughter of Ayiti. So when you looked at the recipe for the chicken creole, I will not say it incorrectly, so I will let Cristela pronounce the Haitian pronunciation of it. But when you looked at the recipe, were there any similarities that you saw between maybe some African recipes that you've seen, or Southern recipes that you've seen, or even some from the Caribbean? Anybody? And feel free to just unmute yourself. I think you can unmute yourself.
Wakia, did you post the recipe?
It was on the little click thingy.
Okay.
So some of the, I'll show what some of the parts of the recipe are, and that'll help. So if you see this picture right here, there's chicken. Of course, we have to have salt, some garlic, different types of onions, thyme. I love that Scotch bonnet pepper. I can't eat food without it. Bell peppers, some oil, onion, and tomato paste. So looking at those, is there any similarity that you see to either Southern recipes, some African recipes, or Caribbean recipes?
Definitely the Caribbean recipes. I would say like West Indian Jamaican recipes. Like if I want to make some curry chicken, I cannot make curry chicken without Scotch bonnet. So the similarities, and the stallions. A lot of the West Indian dishes or the recipes are somewhat similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So I'm from Liberia. And when I first looked at this recipe, it reminded me a lot of this, we call it chicken gravy. And after we fry chicken, usually there's still portions of it in the pot. And then we'll put pepper and onions and fry that up and then serve it with white rice and the gravy. But it looks pretty much exactly like this. So I was like, this isn't going to be a hard thing to make at all. Anyone else? Y'all scared to speak?
I would say definitely the garlic. Let me see, I'm thinking of some Southern recipes. So I'm looking at the garlic, um, probably the onion, the yellow onion, black pepper. So I see traces of Southern cooking here.
All right, thank you for that. The reason I ask that is because often when we're talking about our histories, those of us who are part of the diaspora, we're not always looking at all of the threads that connect us from where we originally came from. And I very much believe, and I teach my students always, that though we may have been placed in various places, there's a language connection. There's definitely a food connection. And if you were listening to the music as we came on, there's very much a music connection. The drums, the beating on the 2 and 4 is very much something that happens in the diaspora a lot. So my next question, you can tell that I'm an educator. What were you taught about Haiti in school, if anything?
I wasn't taught anything about Haiti in school.
And you went to school here?
Yeah.
Okay, I went to school here also, heard nothing about Haiti. When I was in middle school in Liberia, though, I did hear about Haiti.
I would say there might have been something in a textbook somewhere that maybe talked a little bit, but if there was anything, it was very little.
Right. Anyone else? What were you taught about Haiti in school? Whether it was college, high school, middle school?
Hi. So my name's Dania. I was actually exposed to just a little blurb about the revolution and Toussaint Louverture, but that was pretty much it. And that was probably during Black History Month for a presentation or something. Wow. It might have been that I had to go and look it up, but I briefly remember learning about that in elementary school.
Thank you, Dania. Renee?
And I would agree with that too. That's what I learned in elementary school about the revolution and just the basic stuff about it being the first free country in the Western Hemisphere. But then nothing else. And interestingly enough, I guess you didn't hear anything else about Haiti until the 80s when they decided to start vilifying Haiti and blaming it for AIDS.
Right. I saw that Renee unmuted. Would you like to say something?
Oh, yes. I learned about Haiti. It was geography, that it was next to the Dominican Republic. And then a good friend of mine who came from the Dominican Republic would give us, meaning our circle of friends, information about Haiti. And that was about it.
Thank you. So following up on what our president Stephanie said, what are some of the stories you usually hear about Haiti from mainstream media? Because I remember when I was growing up and I didn't know enough about life, I watched 700 Club, and I very much remember Pat Robertson saying that Haitians had made some type, or the whole country had made a pact with the devil, and that's why there were hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, all kinds of things happening. What else did you hear? And even now, what else have you heard about Haiti from mainstream media?
Baby Doc back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
They're not nice stories. Let's just say that. I really
Right.
not want to repeat the stories because they're not, they were not good stories that we heard.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm just getting gas. I haven't.
Hi, Wakia. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. This is Dina.
Hi.
Hi. I was like President Stephanie. I heard, negative stories about them starting AIDS. And then you hear the voodoo stories, they're the main users of voodoo and how it's so negative. So, what I've heard was always negative about Haiti. You're muted.
Right. And I don't even think that it was perhaps a mistake. I believe that it was strategic. It was definitely on purpose that we hear what we hear about certain countries, and we'll definitely go through more history about it. But I wanted to introduce now Cristela Leandre, who will speak to us a little more about her own experiences as a daughter of that beautiful country.
Good evening, guests and sisters of Epsilon Pi Omega. I just wanted to thank you for inviting me, Dr. Watia. But I, as a young girl growing up in Brooklyn, it was tough. In the 80s, like you said, Sister Kim, it was tough because my maiden name was Jean Pierre. And I said, you know what, I'm going to embrace being Haitian. And so a lot of people that knew me from back in the days, they always knew, they're like, Priscilla, that was one thing she would not lie about where she came from. I said, listen, I'm Haitian and I'm cool. So therefore, I'm going to make it cool being Haitian because it wasn't cool being Haitian. I'm going to be honest with you. So I said, my name is Priscilla Jean-Pierre. I'm Haitian and I'm fly. That's how you excuse myself. You can ask anybody that knew me back in the day. But I made it into something that I could, like, people would respect me because growing up, they would say, oh, yeah, you're Haitian, so, you're a Haitian body odor, or all of these negative things they could say about Haitian. But I had older siblings that gave me pride. They taught me about where I came from. So it wasn't, so therefore, I was like, listen, I'm not going to hide from where I come from, and learning a different language. I'm going to speak it, I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to embrace it, And I am so happy that, my family took the time to explain my roots and explain where I came from. And that's why I guess I have that strong personality, is because of my ancestors. I guess I will blame it on them. But yeah, that's all I have to say about my upbringing and living in Little Haiti in Brooklyn, going to like a school where there was a lot of West Indians, but the Haitians were vilified, so if you were from Jamaica, you were cool. If you were from Trinidad, you were cool. But Haitians, they were like, oh no, you're not cool. But I was like, listen, I'm not running because my name is Christelle Jean-Pierre, and I love it and I'm going to embrace it. And to this day, I do. And I married a Haitian man. His name is Jacques Leon, and my name is now Christelle Leon. So that's about it. That's all I have to say about my Haitian upbringing.
Thank you so much for that. And as we just ended Women's History Month, I think it's very important that we acknowledge how challenging it can be as women to fully embrace where we may have come from, our languages, our culture. So thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to come back to question 4 later. So hopefully you've already done some of the seasoning, and your food should be doing a little bit simmering, and I will show you what it's looking like, at least in my pot right now. Oh yeah. All that good stuff. And I always have to make a lot because, like I said, it's a big family. All right, so let's do some history. So when we look at what the Haitian social pyramid was, this wasn't what original Haitians had for themselves. We know that there were indigenous people everywhere before other people went to discover their lands. And I'm actually going to ask Cristela to help with some of the pronunciation of these words so that I do not say it incorrectly. I know what it means in English, but I don't pronounce it properly. So if you first look at the population, and we're gonna go from the bottom of the pyramid, and notice that it's very similar to some of what we see even now when we're looking at the people in the United States who are the foundation of the economy, but somehow don't reap the same benefits. So the enslaved people, and these words right here, there were 452,000 of them. So that's 87% of the population, which is far more than what we see on the top. But if you keep on going up, there are people who may have looked kind of like enslaved people, but depending on where they were educated, depending on whether one of their parents honestly had attacked their mom, or there were other types of relationships, their skin was lighter, their hair was a different texture. And that was about 5% of the population. And if we think about the idea of colorism that we've experienced here in the South, Africa, everywhere, this is a little bit of an illustration of that. And then if you look right here, only 8% of the population were actually the people who were engaging in the oppressive behavior for those who were enslaved at that time, and even some of the jeunes de couleur. And the reason I say enslaved instead of slaves is enslaved means that it's something that happened to you, whereas to call one a slave, it is something that they're embracing. And as we'll continue to see, they never, ever embraced that. So when you look at this picture, look very carefully at what you see here, texture and tone here, texture and tone here, and this person here. What do you see in this picture that is somewhat indicative of that pyramid that you just saw before? I'm into conversation. That's why I keep on asking questions. So what do you see? What do you see? You're muted.
You see this lady right here that's sitting down?
Uh-huh.
A marabout.
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean?
That means a mulatto.
Mm-hmm.
Someone that's, mixed. So she was considered back then the same class, second class, not first class, second class, to the white.
Okay.
But she wasn't on the same level. But I think Sister Alex is also here, and Sister Emily, who is also Haitian, they could also chime in.
Nice to see you all. What else do we see here?
Definitely a class system. The way that even they're positioned. You've got the ones that have a little bit more melanin in their skin. They're positioned lower than the one who has the finest, the fairest skin.
Mm-hmm. Anything else we see?
Yes, we can see those who have darker skin are providing a service.
Mm-hmm. What do you notice about the positioning of the umbrellas?
Sheltering those who are lighter skinned.
Aha.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that and how there are some, there were some of these, I can't even call it a motto, but there were like chastising that would often happen and still happens in some cultures where people are said to tell their kids not to marry darker than what you are so that you can raise the race or lighten the race.
I also saw something, if you don't mind going back to the picture, that even though the, as was explained earlier, the mulatto woman is offering a service to the white person, I believe she's white, that the darker skinned person is then serving the mulatto woman because she's the one holding the umbrella even over her. So you can see the levels of just colorism and the caste system that's created because of the color of their skin, where one, even though they're both of African descent, is then subservient to the other.
Exactly. So this is something that I saw while I was doing research, and I always want to make sure that we actually read as much of this. And what this is saying right here, it says something about your black eyes. You can't work because you're not well, but I'll give you a warm bath to cure you and curry combing afterwards. And there are some people who believe that you would be able to either wash your skin clean of your brownness or blackness. And then there were others who basically said, if you're no longer able to work, you no longer have any use in this society. And often they were murdered in very horrid ways. That's one. And this is another where we would see, while people are landing in different islands from the western coast of Africa, a lot of what we've seen on TV where people are clothed and they're somewhat given a piece of their dignity, that was not the case. There were enslaved people who were completely naked. Some of them were already followers of Islam. And so the women who were very, very modest were made to be ashamed because their bodies were unclothed. Their teeth would be checked as if they were horses in order to determine how well their health was, because we know that tooth health is something that's indicative of heart health. Parts of their body would be squeezed often, and if they'd been beaten, they would be lanced and branded and put pitch and tar over their skin in order somehow to show that they hadn't actually been hurt. So our people went through quite a lot. We won't go through reading all of this, but it gives an idea, a written explanation of a lot of what happened, including the mutilations. And again, while I know this is absolutely horrid, I think it is very important, in the same way that we are told, never forget 9/11, never forget the Holocaust. We should never forget that it wasn't just 400 years and it wasn't just the United States. So next was the French Revolution. And it's always interesting how there's one group of people fighting for their freedom while they're fighting to keep other people bound. Just as in what would become the United States, that happened in 1776. The French Revolution happened where there were different people being freed to ensure that the super rich weren't always the ones that are in charge. Sadly, that didn't really change. So the French Revolution breaks out, and certain whites were calling for independence, which meant that those who were of mixed race and those who were enslaved were asking for rights. Those of you who are lovers of history already know what happened there. So in 1791, there was full citizenship given to all free Blacks born of free parents. But this is the thing, all over the world, though at one time your stock and your standing was given to you based on your father, because we knew that a bunch of the enslavers were attacking enslaved women, they changed the statute so that a person was given the standing of the mother. And more often, the mothers were not going to be freed. And that was done on purpose, so that even after slavery was abolished, or rather the importation of enslaved people was abolished, you still had a growing, it was pretty much like a breeding farm to continue enslavement. And because some people were given some types of rights and other people weren't, that may have even looked the exact same way, there was a problem. And so there were many, many slave revolts. And that started to get the United States and other Caribbean nations terrified, because they were like, hold up a second. If some in Jamaica or Trinidad, or God forbid, the South of the United States hear that there are Black people fighting and winning their rights, what are we going to do? Eventually, though, there was an abolition of slavery. But just because there's an abolition of slavery does not mean that full rights are ever being given, because where money comes in, there's always a fight to maintain some type of oppression. And so we have the wonderful Toussaint Louverture, who comes to the stage, and he raised an army to resist French colonialism. He only started to support some of the French ordinances after the abolition of slavery. But think about it again, this is a powerful person who raised an army to go against a big empire. Though he was named Governor General in 1799, what happened afterwards was Napoleon Bonaparte tried to reclaim Haiti. And to do that, he had to divide and conquer. He knew that Louverture was not just a general, but he was a very important symbol while he was on that portion of the island. So Napoleon invited him to a conference. Louverture was intercepted and arrested, and he ended up dying in a French prison in 1803. But that's not the end of the story. Jean-Jacques Dessalines then became the head of the Haitian army, and he kicked out the French. November 18, 1803. He was, that all happened during, Scorpio time, just to let you know, like we fight like that. But on the 1st of January, 1804, Haiti was declared the very first free Black republic. And one of the things that I do every New Year's Day, either Christella or another Haitian friend of mine will bring me soup jumu, but my kids know that I don't really like to share food. And so the one way that they're able to eat some is if they can tell me some of Haitian history. And so they've learned all of this. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was that after Haiti became free, they weren't fully free. Up until literally a few years ago, they actually had to continue paying France for their freedom. So imagine you're working for centuries and you're not paid. You have sugar. You have so many different kinds of fruit. You have tobacco. You are literally the perfect place to grow just about everything. And you have brilliant people who are skilled in the arts, in different types of literature, in understanding how astronomy and astrology work. But you end up being as poor as possible, because the entire world pretty much that is known and that is starting to make the rules for everyone else decides that you have absolutely no right to the same freedom that Europeans and their descendants have. And so I'm going to stop sharing for now. And so when we see Haiti in the news to this day, there is seldom any good news that is spread. They're always talking about something going on with the government or something happening environmentally. And it has to do with the fact that to this day, though in name, Haiti is free, if you're not economically free, you're still not fully free. So on this day, when we have our Global Impact Day, please remember so many Haitian restaurants that are around Queens that we can patronize. A lot of these institutions still send things back home in order to help the people there and to continue to build the country. And I think that one day, and I'm not an ambassador or a politician or anything like that, I think that the day is coming pretty soon where there will be more nations that are on the side of Haiti, lending and linking arms with them in order to experience, for them to experience that full freedom that, that they definitely should have. And that is the end of my history portion of the presentation. Any comments, any input that any of you have? I'd love to hear it. Yes.
Hi there, Sororotia.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say thank you for that wonderful history lesson. And I wanted to add, just as a proud Haitian American, a lot of people don't realize that, yes, after the revolution, Haitians were not allowed to participate in the trading, and that they were made and forced, the greatest insult of all, to pay reparations to the people who enslaved her. And up until my dad was a child, he said he remembers having to fundraise as a child in school for this fund that went to France. And so right now, today, there's a very strong reparations movement, just like there is in this country, to get reparations from France. So, but of course, like any other such movement where you're trying to secure right wrongs, there's a lot of pushback. But I support the reparations movement 100%, both in the US and in Haiti. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Victoria?
I agree wholeheartedly, Sora Alexandra, another proud Haitian American here. And I love when we do delve into the topic of Haiti's history and pursuit of independence and revolution. There's a movie that is on, and I'm not sure if you covered this already, so forgive me if you did, that is on YouTube. I'm going to include the link in the chat, that really delves very deeply into the history. We always lift up Louverture and Dessalines, but there are so many more players that were a part of it. And I think when I watched it, it was very eye-opening to me about all the things that were implored into getting us to be the first sovereign Black nation. So I wanted to share that with everyone. I don't know if everyone can see that link. I'm not sure.
Can you, if you place it again, I made the chat open because it wasn't open before. Thank you so much.
Right.
And
1804, the hidden history of Haiti's independence.
I'll definitely take a look at that. And I can't remember who said something before about the how people said a whole lot about voodoo, so-called. I don't think that it can be understated, the power of calling on ancestors to help. I always say that in addition to that, they probably had to serve people Betancourt in order to fall asleep, because that's like the strongest rum on the face of the earth to me. But I definitely will make sure that I watch that, Victoria, and share it. Christella, you're about to say something?
It's a great documentary. It's a great documentary.
Thank you. So has anyone else been simmering their food, or are you just waiting to eat afterwards? Well, I'm going to eat. I have my rice set up. I have my chicken. It's smelling amazing. I made sure that there's some Scotch bonnet in there because, like I said, in Liberia, we eat pepper food all the time. But I've just had such a great time, and we don't want to keep you long because I know you want to eat something. And I guess as you go, what does President Stephanie say? The pink ladies in the sky playing music as we simmer and go.
So I'm going to jump right in here if I can.
Sure.
Yes, because I bet you didn't expect that tonight, did you? Okay, we said this was going to be impactful because global impact, we can see, I definitely learned some things tonight. And I would venture to guess that maybe some of you learned a few things tonight. And that's what global impact is all about. It's really about impacting our knowledge, learning some things about who we are in the world with, and maybe changing perceptions and becoming more globally linked in a good way. So this is just the beginning. You've had a taste of what where the Global Impact Committee is going, led by our own Dr. Warkia Duncan, who, thank you so much, taking us so skillfully through the history of Haiti. And if we have ordered our food, it should be arriving. If we are cooking, it should be simmering, and we should be ready to get into it. And just while we are enjoying, because the other thing is Dr. Warkia Duncan is celebrating her husband's birthday tonight. So let me wish him, for all of us, a very happy birthday. I know he will enjoy the food that you have been preparing all day. So, well, whenever you prepared it, I know that they're all going, he's going to enjoy it tonight. And I would just like to say a thank you to all of you for joining this program tonight. And, just taking some time out to learn and look for a little bit more. So I am going to end this portion of the program, but we have some wonderful music to listen to as we prepare to get ready for whatever we're about to do. So for the next 5 minutes, enjoy, everyone.
Yum, yum.
Ah!
Si maman mal fontif, l'amour volé gouffle, pas contre pour qui ramène toujours. L'amour ça fait moins fou. Souhaitez un jour ça va changer, m'a toujours là, pas qu'un danger. N'a pas sauvé tout ça qui sale, tout ça qui fait mal. Musique ça. C'est la première fois qu'on s'en madame. Yo kembe, yo maré, Becky Git under control. Sur quand ça mal fonti, l'amour volé gouffle, par contre pour qui amène toujours. L'amour ça fait moins fou. Souhaitez un jour ça va changer, toujours là, pas qu'un danger. On n'a pas sauvé tout ça qui sale, tout ça qui fait mal. volé coup franc, pas comme pour qui m'amène toujours. Mon ça fait moi fou. Sauter un jour, ça va changer. Il m'a toujours là, pas qu'un danger.
Going on.
Ça qui ça,
Searching.
vraiment. Et n'a pas ça fait pire, malgré tout que nous pas d'amour, toujours là pour nous. C'est n'a pas ça pareil, les femmes sentir sous la planète. L'amour n'a pas changé, tout ça qui ça fait mal.
Again for being with us.
Wazati man, yo kembe, cap that match football. Inati man, yo kembe, Derzati man, yo kembe, Wazati man, yo kembe.
Thank you
night,
again for
everyone.
being here. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Great.
Bye.
Great event.
Thank you.